This is the Smart Buildings Academy podcast with Phil Zito, episode 380. Hey folks, Phil Zito here, and welcome to episode 380 of the Smart Buildings Academy podcast. In this episode, we're going to talk through how to rapidly develop a workforce. Everything we talk about today will be available at our website, and you will find that link in the description wherever you're listening to this or watching this. All right, folks. So I've had a lot of conversations with our customers this week, as well as folks who have the potential of becoming our customers. And the one reoccurring thing I've heard is just how desperate they are for talent. They're looking everywhere. You've got folks hiring people from Geek Squad. You've got people going into retraining departments within their local state, at least here in the United States, trying to go and find talent that they can connect with and employ for their teams. Now, why do we have this workforce challenge? I think what we really have to appreciate in order to solve this challenge is to understand where this challenge comes from. And we can do that through a couple ways. One, we can look at kind of how we got into this position. We could talk about the traditional models for workforce development. We can talk about where do you find new talent, and then we can talk about, more importantly, how do you develop that talent, and finally, how do you retain that talent? These are going to be pillars of topics that we're going to be talking about quite extensively over the next several months, because I believe that we are in for a retrofit palooza, for lack of a better word. You look at the incentives and you look at the penalties related to building efficiency, and the only way you solve that is through building automation. That is the easiest way to solve building efficiency. So I think we're going to see a lot of legacy assets undergoing retrofits. So how did we get into this workforce challenge? So when I first started in this industry many, many years ago, back when I had hair, the industry had no real onboarding process, still really doesn't, and had no real definition of what a role was, still really doesn't. Something we're working on behind the scenes. We'll be announcing something about that within the next couple weeks. But the interesting thing has been that you literally learned by doing, and it took a long time and you made a lot of mistakes along the way. But once you learned, everyone else that you hired was expected to learn by doing as well. And then on top of that, you had all these legacy product lines, and you had these folks who would specialize in these legacy product lines, and they maintained a lot of the service revenue base of customers. Fast forward to 2020, we started to see a lot of these experienced technicians leave the workforce, choosing to retire, choosing to move out of the workforce. At the same time, we were still following, I'm going to take a sip of water here. We were still following this traditional model of trade schools, apprenticeships, and OJT. I mean, before we rolled out our workforce development program, the fastest apprenticeship you could have was a 12-month apprenticeship. And even then, it was kind of pushing it. We'll talk about different models a little bit later in the podcast. But they're traditional models, and they worked well. The challenge was they took time. You had the 2 to 4 year trade schools. You had the 1 to 3 year apprenticeships, and then you had just OJT. And even with mentors, and the challenge with mentors is if you're using a mentor-led apprenticeship model, those every time you have a mentor working with an apprentice, they are not out producing profit on the job site. So if you're stretched thin and unable to execute backlog, this creates a challenge. So these things, they, along with people leaving the workforce and us as an industry doing a poor job of talking about just how awesome building automation is, that led to not enough people coming in and a lot of people going out. So the first question I get asked whenever I talk to executives is, where can we find talent? So I'm going to spend the next 5 minutes talking about where I've seen success. I'll talk about why. And if you want to know more, definitely hit us up in the comments. I'm going to take another sip of water. Give me 1 second here. All right. So where do you find talent? Like, where do you go? And I have heard a little bit of everything. We have some customers that will go to Geek Squad. They will go to the local computer support company, and they will hire for like network or computer hardware techs. And they'll say, oh, we'll train them on HVAC. On the flip side, we'll see people hiring residential HVAC techs, or we'll see people hiring electrical installers or test and balance folks. And then we see a lot of retraining organizations at the state and local level. One of those is Stacks and Jewels, who I highly recommend if you have not looked into them. They have a really solid program. I'm going to be promoting them on our podcast because I believe in their mission of helping folks in the inner city. They are a nonprofit, and I'd like to see them expand to other cities. So I'm going to try to bring more awareness to them. And then you have the military. You have military talent. Now, all of these talent pools can be utilized if you utilize the proper methodology to train and develop them. The challenge is, how do you get their attention? How do you get someone who's working at Best Buy Geek Squad to go and recognize that there is a potential for a building automation career? Now, in an ideal world, I would wave a magic wand and guidance counselors in high schools and VOTEC schools in the K-12 space would be saying, building automation exists. It's amazing. Do it. Do it now. It's the best job you could ever do. That is a long game, right? That's not a short game. That's a long game. We're definitely working on that, but it's something that's going to take some time. So right now you're regulated to 4 primary avenues. Avenue 1, job sites. If you find a really good electrical installer, you find a really good test and balance or commissioning agent, pitch them an offer. Who knows? I really like those avenues because they already understand the construction market. They have rudimentary skills that we can utilize, and they're employed. So that's option 1. Option 2 is looking at either local or state-led retraining organizations, which you can simply Google. Just Google retraining organizations in my state and find the local and connect with the representative there. And you should be able to start working with people who are potentially reduced in force, so who are RIF'd or let go. Additionally, you can connect with your local military liaison and hopefully draw people from that as well. And then, the third area is just the general population. And this is the hardest area to draw from. We have worked with some organizations to help write essentially ads for them to help draw people into their programs. And this is something that we've seen some good success from. It's been able to draw postal workers and folks like that who have went on to become technicians, and in very short order, using some of the programs I'll talk about in just a second. But it is definitely more of a challenge if you can get to people who actively push versus pull. And that's what I want you to think about when you think about new talent. I want you to think about push and pull. So pulling is where you are going out, you're using ads, you're using, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, TikTok ads, whatever, and you're trying to draw people into your orbit. You are pulling them. It is inherently more costly and difficult to do this. Push is where organizations are pushing talent to you. This is where you would go and connect with these retraining organizations, or maybe you would go and connect with other organizations like military advocacy groups, of some of which we have partnerships with. I'll definitely talk about that in a future episode. I'm going to take another sip of water. Give me 1 second. But you brought in these folks now. You have brought them in, and the first thing to do is to have a actual structure. You want to have a structure, and this can become very important when we talk about how do you retain talent later in this episode. But you want to have a structure for how do you pay them? How do you escalate their pay? Because that's very important to the younger generation, is knowing their path. That's how you retain people. What does their job role entail? And then you have to align what that job role entails with where your inefficiencies and potential issues on the actual job site. So you want to go and figure that out. And that will then go and help you to be able to go and figure out, like, hey, this is what I need to do. This is who I need to focus on, like from a development perspective. What do they need to know? Stuff like that. All right, give me 1 second. I'm just fixing something here. Sorry about that. Okay, so once you have that all mapped out and you have it figured out that this is what we're going to do with these people, this is how we're going to pay them, these are the things we're going to do. Now you're going to want to go and actually develop the people. And this is where the rubber meets the road. You know, like I said, there's traditional models. You'll see some apprenticeship programs out there that take 1 year to 3 years. You'll see some trade schools that are 2-year programs. You'll see people who advocate for OJT. Well, all of those things work. The issue is time to revenue. How quickly can you get to revenue as part of the training and hiring process? So everything I talk about here is going to be revenue focused. It's going to be focused on getting you profitability out of these people as quick as possible. And there's a reason I focus on profitability, because I can bill out a technician 100% and be completely non-profitable. So I can go and have no profit, zero profit, but have someone working on a job all the time. And all that's going to do is tank my job, piss people off. And yeah, it's not going to be good. So first thing, internships. This is one of the older models, but it still works. There are both unpaid and paid internships. This is where you bring on someone who maybe just graduated their HVAC school. Maybe they graduated from a VOTEC school, and you have a clear outline of what you want them to do. Where do internships tend to thrive? Not so much for service techs, but for construction tech, definitely. You will use an internship, and what you'll do with an internship is you'll say, okay, we're going to have them do installation. We're going to have them do maybe takeoffs. Maybe we're going to have them do upload and download. If you go back to a lot of our previous podcasts that talk about process and procedural thinking, if it is a process that can be repeated again and again, it is good for an internship. When you get to things that potentially deviate, that's where maybe using an internship doesn't make quite as much sense. The next one is an in-house training program. I'm going to take another sip of water. Bear with me just 1 second. All right, in-house training programs. So one in-house training program I think about is the Hayes University program. I know the guy who runs it, and they have built a whole training program in-house. Now, this is definitely a long game play. It's expensive to build in-house training programs. There can be a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You can need to go and pull a lot of tacit knowledge and subject matter expertise around training, and it can be expensive. So you have to weigh this on the long game. Is this something we want to build? Do we want this expense? Do we believe that we will have enough hiring in the long term for this to make sense? And if so, how do we build it? And that's probably for a whole nother podcast episode in itself. The third and final way that I like to advocate for talent development is rapid, accelerated workforce development programs. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I definitely am biased because we have the only 11-week workforce development program that is proven to take postal workers and lobby clerks and gas station attendants and turn them into service techs in 11 weeks. We've done it for multiple cohorts completely online. If it's something you want to know more about, just reach out to us in the comments. We can definitely tell you because we got an upcoming cohort. But that is where I think the future is. We came up with that idea looking at the IT sector and their rapid boot camp model. And we said if we abandoned the belief that you need at least a year to train people, and we said you can do it in 3 months, what would that look like? And that's how that program came about. But you have to develop this new talent. Now, an area I want to spend a lot of time on is called talent retention. It's an area I feel does not get talked about enough. It seems like folks are all at the trot on hiring people and getting them trained. And you'll have a lot of these organizations that will tell you they can train people. What they will not tell you is how to retain the people you train. That's the first objection that, I mean, you can imagine as the largest vendor agnostic training organization, we get asked a lot of questions. And one of the most common questions we get is, are people just going to leave once we train them? And there's that old saying, which is, yes, you can not train them and or you could train them and they leave. But what happens if you don't train them and they stay? And, it's funny and cute, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but there is some truth around it. What is the cost of potentially going and not training people? But also, how do you avoid people leaving if you do train them? And this is where you can look at several different things. You could go very heavy handed or you can go very culturally sensitive. And I think the answer tends to lie a little bit in the middle, but I'm going to go through each one. So, one of the more heavy handed ways you can do, and this is legally enforceable in some states and others it's not, is to attach a training payback model or training payback contract in some cases. This is where you essentially say, we're going to invest in you. This is the cost of the program. And if you leave within a year, this is your cost to pay it back. If it's 2 years from now, this is your prorated cost, etc. So these are training payback contracts that I have seen some organizations institute. Personally, I don't find anything necessarily wrong with them. I mean, if a company is willing to take a chance on you, why can you not take a chance on them? I feel like it's give and take a little bit. It should be win-win done right. But it is something that some people get pretty worked up over. The complete other side of the spectrum, and it's the spectrum our organization, you've probably seen some of our posts. We really embrace this, which is cultural values and engagement. We try to build a culture of collaboration. We try to give people a clear path forward with their career. We try to engage people by asking them for their ideas. Because let's be real, when you're a first year tech and you're out on the job, a lot of companies treat you like a gopher. You carry around tools, you don't get to do really anything exciting. And I think this is largely due to how we used to train people with these 1 year to 3 year apprenticeship programs or these trade school programs where, they're good, but at the same time, we get a lot of people sent to us after they go through these programs to get taught how to do stuff. So I'll just leave it at that. So going and actually training people in a way that they can actively contribute to the business and are recognized for that contribution, this has a direct effect on cultural retention. Additionally, something we do as part of our organization, both for our workforce development students as well as for our internal employees, is we use personality assessments of the manager, of the role, and of the person. And we look for how can this person be led? How can this person be motivated? What does this job role entail as far as behavioral characteristics? And from that, we create a model and we go and lead our people. And we hope that our customers who take all this information and debrief from us are leading their people using it as well. It's definitely a service we're continuing to build out on a day to day basis. But cultural engagement, in my opinion, it makes life a lot more enjoyable. It makes your employees much more likely to stay with you. And it feels very win win to me. The third and final way that I've found to retain talent is having clear development paths. This is something that I see lacking in the training space. It's something we've focused heavily on, which is the use of skill assessments. So, assessing people before training, assessing people after training, then aligning their assessment results with a development path that then is used to guide that person's development. Hopefully, they purchase more training from us later in their career, but regardless, at least they have a development path. And this is something that personally is a reason why I stuck around, besides for good cultural engagement and leadership, at companies I've worked at in the past. And I hear this from our students as well. If their boss genuinely shows they care and they're given a clear development path and they know exactly what it takes for them to reach the next level, then they tend to stay. They tend to leave when they feel like they aren't being recognized, they don't have a clear path, and they aren't sure of what they are doing and how what they're doing is impacting folks. So far, I've laid out a lot of information. I'm going to pause for a second and see if anyone has any questions. And feel free, I'm an open book. I will definitely go and answer any questions you have related to these topics. So just so you know, uh, I'll answer anything you got. I will say, um, as I look forward to the market, I see a significant, and I hear this from so many customers, that the retrofit opportunities are real. They are coming, folks. Depending on where what you read, 60 to 80% of the building stock does not have controls in it, yet is expected to reach efficiency goals and sustainability goals, lest there be penalties and lest there be increases in utility costs on the consumption and the demand side that people aren't budgeting for. So, how do they address these issues? They're going to address energy conservation measures through metering and through retrofit. How do you execute that? You need a specific type of talent to be able to, one, do the pre-sales engineering, like do the site walks, figure out the ECMs, figure out that stuff. By the way, that's a course we're going to have coming up in the very near future. Two, you then need people to be able to go and project manage retrofit opportunities as an owner's rep, which is completely different than being a sub of a sub. And three, you need people who can actually go and execute this stuff. So it's going to be really interesting. How do you go and actually execute this work? That is something that a lot of folks are really concerned about right now when I talk to them. Are like, how do I go and handle if I get a 10% increase in retrofit work? What do I do? All righty. So Jeff Young asks, what advice do I have for acquiring and retaining employees that are already high level? So Jeff, I'm going to flip that question back to you and ask, what does high level mean to you? Because I'll be straight up with you. Running almost 10,000 people now through our skill assessment. We put some pretty high paid people through the skill assessment only to realize, well, they were wizards with one set of technology when it came to IT, cybersecurity, databases, integration, whatever. They were, I don't want to say useless, very limited in their skill set. So, high level can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. I'd be interested in what that means to you so I could better answer your question. I would preface things just real quickly with high level. Please do not make the mental connection to high level needs high years of experience because it doesn't necessarily. This isn't to poo poo on people who have been around for 20 to 30 years. I'm not saying that someone with 20 to 30 years is not high level, but I'm also saying they're not. I'm also, I guess I'm contradicting myself. Forget the mental gymnastics that just went on. All right. But in all seriousness, I would rather have someone with 5 years at a hospital, like a level 1 trauma hospital or a data center, like a tier 4 data center, than someone who's worked 20 years on the same three-story office building. I know those are extreme examples, but, that's my first thing. Now that you've defined this, so a wizard in their realm, um, all right. Well, the first thing I tend to look for is I look at what organization would have someone that is multi-skilled and multifaceted. So you're almost gonna be going for a system integrator, a service technician, or someone on the energy services side, someone who does owner direct work. They tend to have that kind of experience, people who work on major projects. Once you identify that, you need to study that person. And I know um, this isn't the easy answer, but in my opinion, it's the right answer. And this is just my opinion, Jeff. So take it how you will. I believe that if you want to pay someone 140, 160 grand a year, then it behooves you to take time to get to know that person. Like almost anyone can have the technical abilities to a certain level, but not everyone's going to have the cultural fit. So maybe I find someone who is a genius, but they can't get along with their coworkers. They can't get along with customers. They literally have to be fed under the door. You know, that kind of person you keep in the closet, you let them out, when no one's around. So really spend time to get to know the cultural fit of the person. But then start to understand, like, if you're getting to know the cultural fit of the person, you're going to understand why this person, what they value. Do they value time with their family? Do they value contributing to a charity? Are they really fired up about sustainability and the environment? What really motivates that person on a day to day basis? I know that for each one of our teammates here at Smart Business Academy. And I encourage you to figure that out about the potential people. Once you understand that, it is much easier to have a conversation about potentially working for you because you'll know right off the bat if this person is super focused on this one issue and that is an issue that is not at all culturally aligned with your business. It's good to know up front because you're not going to waste your time trying to recruit that person. But if you know for a fact that their cultural value, what their motivating factor is really tied to yours, then it's going to be very easy. Because while I'm not going to say people aren't money motivated, that would be a load of crap. But people have different levels of sensitivity to money motivation, meaning that you may only be able to pay someone 120 and they may be making 150 right now, but they may be driving 3 hours each way every day and are missing their uh, childhood, right? And if you're able to give them that, if you're able to say, "You know what? I want you to work in the office and do software engineering, and our office is 15 minutes from your house. That is the type of conversation because I hope this was a very kind of pie in the sky answer. It wasn't very technical, but I don't know if you took any value from it, Jeff. I hope you did. So hopefully that helps. Maybe it's maybe it's completely confusing, but we'll see. Alrighty. Who else has some questions for me? Let's see if anybody else has anything while I wait to see if that helped Jeff. Hopefully it did. So, yeah, folks, there you have it. I mean, at the end of the day, I would encourage you to, okay, Jeff says, I'm a stranger with cultural stuff. I need to study up. Jeff, good thing. Um, my wife and co-owner is a licensed psychotherapist, very, very knowledgeable in culture and how people think. And we're actually going to start doing episodes on culture. We're going to start doing episodes on how to really lead your employees, how to deal with conflict, how to manage culture. We're going to start to talk about a lot of this because, quite frankly, the way our industry is right now, we are not in a position to lose people just because we're a jackass. You know, like we can't afford to lose someone because of an ego issue or improper leadership. And so that is something that we're going to be talking about in the very near future quite a bit. Um, like I was saying, I really encourage you all to challenge the traditional models. Uh, I encourage you to think through, does it make sense to put someone in a program that takes a year or to 3 years long? Um, or does it make sense to do something in-house or maybe something a little rapider? We do have cohort 4 of our workforce development program coming up. You all know I don't promote very often our stuff. Some of you have told me, you've messaged me privately saying, "Phil, why don't you promote your services more?" People don't realize that you're the largest vendor agnostic training provider for building automation. People don't realize that you have 36 training programs and 12,000 students. And I get that, but I don't want these episodes to just be about me and my business. I want them to bring value to you. But I will say we have had great success with our workforce development program, helping organizations find, train, and retain people who are 80% profitable by week 9 of the program. And I say profitable, not billable, profitable. So if you'd like to learn more about that, definitely check out our website and or message me. Just hit me up on LinkedIn, hit me up on YouTube. We'll definitely connect with you and let you know more. All right, we have a super awesome podcast with Devin Tracy coming up on Friday with Lockheed Martin. She's going to take us through their analytics program. Had a lot of contractors reach out to me. How do I sell analytics? How do I make this make sense for my customers? Devin's going to share. And it's really cool. I like her story because their first time trying to do analytics, it failed. And it's only their second go around that it actually worked. And so she's going to share how it worked, how she did what she did, and lessons learned. And I think you'll take a lot out of it. I think it'll give you some compelling reasons to talk to your customers about analytics. And if you're an owner, I think it'll help provide a framework that you can utilize to deploy analytics within your organization. That being said, I'm going to wait a minute or two, see if anyone's got any questions. Otherwise, we're going to call it a day. All right, let's check a couple places. The usual suspects for where we would find anybody asking questions. All right, LinkedIn, not seeing anything here. On YouTube, Jeff says his wife is in psych as well, so we'll be following those episodes. Awesome. And do we have anything on Facebook? No, we don't. All righty, folks. I got my usual ask. If you've liked these episodes and you find them valuable, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify, or like and subscribe on YouTube. Hit the notification bell so you get notified upon our release of new episodes, and share this with your coworkers or counterparts on LinkedIn. Thank you so much to everyone who listens to our episodes. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have an amazing day. We will not be live Friday, it will be a recorded session, but I still look forward to seeing your questions. Thanks so much, everybody. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day. Take care.